Good afternoon. Today is the 27th of October, and we do sometimes lead quite a glamorous life on this channel. In 2020, for the 1000 subscriber special, I drove a Jaguar E-Type Series 1 in the New Forest. Later that year, I drove a Ford Capri 2.8 injection 4-speed around the country lanes of Essex. For the 3000 subscriber special, I got to drive a very nice Mark II Ford Fiesta around the country lanes of Berkshire. For the 4000 subscriber special, I got to have a go in a lovely Metro Vanden Pla that had been slightly modified, so it had more power than the MG version. For the 5000 subscriber special, I got to drive a very rare 1973 Datsun 260C in the New Forest. For the 6000 subscriber special, I got to drive a lovely Rover P5B. For the 7000 subscriber special, it was a bit less glamorous. It was a question and answer session. And for the 8000 subscriber special, which was only a few months ago, I got to drive that cult favourite electric car, the Honda E. I'm afraid I was going to drive something for the 9000 subscriber special, but that car's not currently working. So you're going to have to put up with me talking in a rainy supermarket car park, which, you know, I'm sure some of you will find agreeable, some of you won't, and you can just turn the video off now. Right, so let's get on with what we need to do. We've got some questions from the community page. The first question is from Mr. Hunter from the incredibly successful Jeff Buys Cars channel. A year ago, he was a smaller channel than mine, and now he has about 10 times the number of subscribers. So guess what formula works better? Anyway, Mr. Hunter asks, do you regret not eating Jeff's pheasant? When I went to see Mr. Hunter last November to drive his Volvo 850 estate, or like one of the many Volvo 850 estates he has owned, he had a go in my C70 before it died, and he killed a pheasant with it. He then went home and cooked it and put the result of the day on his YouTube channel, calling it Fear and Loathing in Las Malvern. Do I regret not eating the pheasant? I had to get back to Hampshire that day, unlike him. I had to drive through some really terrible weather in order to do so. The C70 coped fine, but I had to get back. It wasn't a question of, you know, choice there. I wasn't able to actually stay to eat his lovely meal. If I had been able to stay, I would have very much wanted to partake in that. Right. Okay, well, let's move on to the next lot of questions from the next community post here. It's not actually that many questions here, viewers. I'm quite surprised, actually. Since this is supposed to be a special. I think we're down to the last section of questions already. Okay. Alan Simpson asks, and this is a very good question, if you had to pick a favourite driving road you'd really like to drive in the car you'd most like to drive it in, what would this combination be? You know, that's a very, very good question. It's got to be a road that's actually quite wide. I don't like these roads that are sort of nice and twisty, and then you have to keep stopping the cars coming the other way. It has to be nice and sort of wide. There's actually a very nice road that goes over the top of the moors in the Peak District. I think it's the A57. It's a Snake Pass. That's quite nice. It's a good road, that, if it's not shut in the winter. So that's not bad. That will do. What car would I like to drive that in? It's got to be something with quite good handling. Now, Row 45 V6 is quite good. It's got some quite good handling. I think, to be honest though, we need something that's rear-wheel drive. And so something like a nice manual Lexus IS250, not the F version, just a normal IS250. I drove one of those on No Budget Reviews back in April. That would do nicely, actually. They drive really nicely, those Lexuses or Lexi. Right, next one. Mr. Waters from Scottish Car Enthusiast and Trains TV asks, out of all the Rovers you've owned, and in total that is 9, which has been your favourite? We're going to have to go through my memory bank at this stage and sort of actually think about ones I have owned. So first one was a 1998 Rover 214 SI. That wasn't great. I'm not so keen on the R3 200s and the 25s, just in terms of driving position. They tend to have cable clutches in them, and the brake pedal is not at the same height as the clutch pedal at all. The clutch is by it really high, and the steering wheel's not in a comfortable position. So I'm not so keen on those. 45s are good. The second Rover I had was indeed a 45. It was a 2004 1.4 Club SE. It was a facelift one. That wasn't the best car I've owned, but a lot of problems with that car. Then we moved on to a 1996 it was, 1996 Rover 416 SLI automatic HHR version. That wasn't bad. I paid £255 for that car, and managed to get it in MOT, which was nice. Unfortunately, it didn't last very long. This is back in the day. It was 2018 I got it, when cars were really cheap. You could pick up something to run around in for 300-400 quid, or sometimes even less. It needed a bit of work. I think I actually made a little bit of money on that car, and took it to Santa Pod as well, which was fun. So that one, it was pretty good. It was not bad. It was the Honda engine. The only HHR 400 to have a Honda engine was the 1.6 automatic, like that one. Yeah, that was good. Then Rover 25, it was a 1.4 IL. That was a very early stage of the channel. You actually see that car appear in a couple of videos. It was sort of around October 2018 I bought that. Next Rover I had, oh no, sorry, I've missed one out. It's really important. I've had so many of these. 1996 Rover 216 SLI automatic, a very late registered R8. It would have been made in 95. That I owned between 2015 and 16. And actually I didn't do my due diligence on that car, and I found out it was a write-off because I hadn't checked. And also we needed something for my at the time just lady friend, not even lady fiance, to learn to drive in, and the automatic gearbox on that car, and the fact it was ancient, wasn't probably the best. So that's when we got the MG3. Yeah, that was Nightfire Red, which was a nice colour, but lots of problems with it. It was very old. It had, obviously, it had some kind of write-off, and I think the damage was actually on the roof of the car, because the roof had been repainted, and it always sort of shook under hard acceleration slightly. So I think the roof had been dented and pushed out, but not very well. So yeah, that wasn't great. I traded that car in and got rid of it. So we need to go back to 2019 now. 1998 Rover 620 GSI automatic, which I bought for £320 for the Santa Pod challenge. Wasn't a bad car. It wasn't in very good condition. Air conditioning was broken. Bodywork wasn't very good. Drive window was broken. A very common problem that with the 600s. Headlining was sagging. Yeah, I mean, there's all these cars you could look up on the channel, with the exception of anything kind of before row 25, you won't find anything. But I have talked about a number of cars I've owned, and you know, you might find it in some of those and some thumbnails and things. But yeah, I mean, I sold it for about the same money I paid for it. It was all right. You know, I've driven a lot of other 600s since then. In fact, I've driven 3 more, and they were much better than the one that I had. So mine was just bought for a challenge. It wasn't bought particularly because I wanted to keep it. In fact, I didn't keep it. Next one, 1991 Rover 216 SLI automatic R8, formerly the company car of Mr. Miller from Classics World. Again, it was bought for the abandoned 2020 Santa Pod challenge, which never happened. My lady wife actually really liked that. It was a bit too low in the spec for me, but there wasn't any seat height adjustment. Manual sunroof, and I didn't like the colour particularly. It was a sort of flat red. For the money I paid for it, which was less than £500, in today's context, that was a pretty good car, actually. It needed some work. The brake pads were absolutely shot, and we had to replace them pretty much immediately. So that was okay. Yeah, I sold that on to somebody, and unfortunately, the car was stolen from its next owner at some point in 2022, and nobody seems to know where it is, which is a real shame, actually. Lots of people really liked that car. One of these cars, that they call it a bike, I think, in the community. It's a car that's owned by lots of different people and passed through various hands, and I enjoyed being the custodian of that car briefly. So then we move on to the 45 V6. That was a very, very good car, and it's being enjoyed currently by the Reverend Jason Parry Hughes, otherwise known as Boaty, from the Boaty's World YouTube channel, and he is very, very happy about that car, and I'm happy to have found a buyer for it, because it was being used on a daily basis, and we used it as a daily basis for on and off for about 3 years, and it's not really fair, you know, on a car like that that's so rare, to be using it. And so we had lots of things we had to fix, and now it's in his custodianship and he enjoys it. Next one, 1990 Rover 216 GSI automatic, which I didn't own for very long. I'd first driven that car in 2021. It was owned by a friend of mine called Chris James, and it came for sale again in the summer, and I bought it off a gentleman he was kind of 2 owners down from Chris. It needed a lot of work, and it's been documented elsewhere. There's a very vague vlog coming at some point, which some of you probably haven't seen, because it's, you know, that's available first and foremost for the top 2 tiers of channel membership, and then other people see it later. But it documents some of the work we did on it, some of the money we spent. And eventually I had this offer from somebody who'd been following the process of us putting it together, and he saw it had an MOT, and eventually he just made me an offer I couldn't refuse on it. And I was actually quite glad, because there was a lot more work to do on it. A lot of the maintenance on the car had been skipped for a number of years, and we had to do an enormous amount of stuff, you know, lower suspension arms, one brake caliper, exhaust center section and back box, all new tyres, cam belt, full service, rocker cover. We were going to have to put new headlining in it, just on and on and on. And so, yeah, that car's been sold. I currently don't have a Rover, but we might get another one at some stage. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. What's the favourite one? One I kept for the longest. Both the 45s I kept for about 3 years, actually, which is strange. The second 45, the V6 one, I kept for yeah, let's just think about this. Yeah, it was over 3 years, actually. So I think that's probably the best one I've had. But I have had a lot of Rovers, despite the fact they're, in some ways, they're really not the best cars in the world. But it doesn't matter, does it? Right. Andrew Fitzmaurice. It's really weird so sometimes when you look at these YouTube usernames, it comes up with like a sort of Twitter type at something username, and sometimes it just comes up with the name. This particular, it's at Andrew Fitzmaurice 7843. He's probably got another name as well. What car is your favourite beige leather interior? Funny enough, it's actually it's a tie between 2 cars that I saw in the October sale preview for Barron's Classic Car Auctions that I actually filmed just yesterday. It's already on my channel. 2 Rolls Royces. One's a Phantom 5 that was originally made for the President of Pakistan. That's got a very nice beige leather interior in the back. All the presidential comfort you could ever want in your life. And next to it was a 1937 Rolls Royce, and that also has a beautiful beige leather interior with wood. So it's between those two, I mean, quite literally the Rolls Royce of beige leather interiors. So that's the one. Let's just see down here if we've got anything else. Oh gosh, this is a couple of very interesting questions here. Calarossa 15 says, out of all the 70s British television shows which you like watching, There'll be things like the Professionals and the Sweeney and the New Avengers. What is your favourite car? That's a really difficult question, actually. If it's the 60s, it'd be quite easy because we'd be looking at things like the Avengers and the Persuaders. And actually, Persuaders, that's an interesting thing. Yeah, that's 70 to 71. That actually fits. Yeah, I mean, I like a lot of the cars in the Professionals. The Dolomite Sprint that Lewis Collins drove briefly in the first series of the Professionals is quite nice. I think it's POK 79R. That is good. I quite like the Mark II Capri gear that he actually got a little bit later, when the tie-in and manufacturers changed over from British Airways to Ford. So Capri gear was quite nice. The Capri gear's more my kind of thing, really, than even the Capri 3-liter S's, to be honest. But it's really, if we're going 70s, and of course the Persuaders is the 70s, then it's PPP6H, the 1970 Aston Martin DBS in Bahama yellow with V8 wheels that Roger Moore was supplied for the series by Aston Martin themselves. I prefer a different colour, but the DBS is a lovely car and it suited the character just absolutely at that instance. So let's go on to the next question. Frank Butcher 2615, one of these other names, says, what car would you like to see rebooted as electric, petrol or other fuels mooted from the 1990s, not a Rover, and why? I think one of the cars that I'm really sad about sort of disappearing is the Honda Civic Tourer. But that's not really the one from the 90s. That's a more recent one. Let's think about some from the 90s, not a Rover. Yeah, we can go with the Saab 900, the original generation 900, because that finished in 1993. I think the original generation 900 is a very nice car, very handsome car. I don't know whether I want it fully electric, maybe some kind of, I don't know, sort of hybrid system in it or something like that, because Saab no longer exists. So yeah, one of the late ones of those, I think would be nice. Final question comes from James from JDM Snow Monkey. Now this is a question I've actually never been asked before. I've been asked a lot of questions about the work I do, but I've never been asked this before. How did you get into the field of vehicle consulting, or finding cars for people essentially, as opposed to being a traditional car salesperson? Thing is, I have done sales in my life. When I left university, I had a couple of jobs in the mobile phone industry. I worked for a company that's long dead now called Phones for You, which didn't have really the best reputation. Actually, when I went to get a new home broadband contract yesterday, at the 3 shop, the gentleman actually remembered a lot about it, and it wasn't the best company to work for. I also then worked for Carphone Warehouse, which is a much better company to work for, and they're still around. So I have done that sort of thing. I just don't like selling stuff in that way. I don't like it. I'd much rather kind of not be holding stock and not be worrying about trying to force people to buy things. Some people really like that. I mean, I worked with some people at dealerships who are really passionate about that kind of thing, and they're very good at it. Simon and Dale at Lanny Prestige, they're very passionate about it. They've actually massively grown since I started filming there in 2020. Just Simon on his own at the start, and on a different premises. Then we've got Lee from LSP Car Sales, who has my Volvo 460, the one I used to own as a centerpiece. He loves selling old Volvos. He's got tons of them. It's a good place to pick one of those up, actually. And then John Newey and his brother Nick and the rest of the family and other people who work at Summit Garage, who just celebrated, I think, 70 years or 75 years. Some like enormously long time actually working there. So it's a multi-generational business, and John loves selling stuff to people, and that kind of side of things. I just don't like it. I simply don't like it. I don't like that kind of thing. A lot of people, I think, will relate to me because I've heard a lot of people who don't like selling cars. They just don't like it. They don't like the sort of pressure of doing it, and they'd much rather trade their car into somebody else and let them deal with it. So I just don't like it. I'm far happier doing what I do because it requires both in terms of sort of knowledge about like what cars are out there, what cars are good, and what specifications are, but also kind of just trying to actually see what's suitable. And I like the idea of trying to sort of empirically match a person to a car, and I find that challenge of it very, very interesting. Rather than trying to make the person fit the sort of stock that you have, it's just like, well, we'll see what is out there within a defined radius and a defined budget, and I consider that to be a very satisfactory exercise. And so I decided on my own doing it in 2017. I started, and the channel was meant to support the business. It doesn't really do that particularly. It does, but the vast majority of people I source cars for come through personal recommendation or repeat business. The channel itself, I have done jobs for people who come through the channel, but for whatever reason, it's probably just due to the nature of relationship and how it works. They don't tend to kind of to be people who kind of understand quite what I do in the same way. I don't know how to describe it any better, but they don't quite see the value in what I do so much as people who come to me through personal recommendation. I don't know how else to describe it than that. That tends to be the sort of problem, despite the enormous amount of sort of videos I make and the sort of knowledge that I've accumulated over many years. It doesn't seem to be that they quite value it in the same way. But then if you're an enthusiast, you're probably watching the channel, you kind of know quite a lot of stuff anyway, so you don't necessarily need somebody like me in that way. Whereas if you really don't know very much, and there's a friend of mine asked me to do a job for her soon, and she doesn't know anything about cars at all. Whereas many of you watching the channel, you watch the channel because you already know about cars. So in terms of an actual support to the business, it's rubbish. It's absolutely terrible. It helps in the sense of, like, when I have filmed a particular car that I'm going to go and show to a client, like, this is what the car's like and these are strengths and weaknesses, and I've got a video on it, which is really helpful. But in terms of like actually doing what it's supposed to do in terms of business, it's appalling. It's absolutely appalling. It's much better just to have a website in that sort of way and kind of just do personal recommendation, if that makes sense. Yeah, that's just what I've learned over a vast number of years that I've been doing this. But that's, I think, it. So thank you, all of you, for getting the channel to 9,000 subscribers. It wouldn't be possible without any of you. Yeah, it wouldn't have happened at all. So I'm very grateful for that. I'm also very grateful that I'm very surprised that yesterday's video that is the shambolic shuffle around the Baron Classic Car Auctions October sale has done so well. It's done better than I think any of the others I've ever done before over the last year. I have no idea why. Absolutely no idea. But thank you, and if you're new to the channel, then you're very welcome as well. So thank you ever so much indeed once again for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already done so. Like in the comment below, and we shall see you again soon for more, I don't know, incoherent rambling.